After I found out I was pregnant, Jonathan asked me for a divorce. I asked him why. He said he had gone on a date with a young starlet, had dinner and watched a movie, and it felt pretty good. Do you like her that much? Not really. I just realized I don't like you that much anymore. When I discovered I was pregnant, I was overjoyed, laughing and crying at the same time. I thought Jonathan would react the same way. But he fell silent. He looked at me for a long moment before asking, "Are you sure?" Sure, of course, I was sure. Realizing that my period was delayed by half a month, I immediately went to the hospital. The blood test confirmed it, there was no doubt I was pregnant. After hearing my words, Jonathan fell silent again. His two silences made my heart drop. After a long while, Jonathan irritably clicked his tongue. "Let's get a divorce." What? I stared at him in shock, thinking I had misheard him. He seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. "Let's abort the child, and we'll get a divorce." My hand spasmed uncontrollably. I asked him hoarsely, "Why?" Jonathan's gaze was indifferent. The way he looked at me felt as though he was looking at a stranger, suffocating me. He said, "The company just signed a young starlet, 20 years old, hasn't graduated from college yet, quite beautiful, young and full of energy. The first time you called me and said you needed to talk, I was watching a movie with her. It was a romance film, not very interesting, but she kept chattering beside me, so I didn't fall asleep. At that time, I had just come out of the hospital, brimming with excitement, and trembling as I called Jonathan to tell him right away. But he lowered his voice and said, "I'm busy, we can talk later." It turned out he was watching a movie with someone else. Thinking back, it had been a long time since we had watched a movie together. Because Jonathan was busy, because Jonathan had no time, and because Jonathan didn't like it. My fingertips dug painfully into my palm. He continued, "Later, you called me again, urging me to come home early. At that time, I was having dinner with her at our usual restaurant. But the young girl had peculiar tastes, she recommended dishes we never ordered. To be honest, they were average, but they were okay to have once in a while. By then, I had already waited at home for him for 3 hours. Not a single call, not a message. I wasn't sure if he would come back, or when he would come back. So I called him again. He said he would try. With that try, I waited another 3 hours. I had cooked 1 meat dish, 1 vegetable dish, and a soup, all still on the table. I had wanted to wait for him to come home and eat together. Now it seemed unnecessary. This made me feel cold, a chill that radiated from my bones. But Jonathan had no intention of letting me go. He continued, "The girl is still waiting for me in the car." Honestly, I was hesitating whether to take her home or go to a hotel with her. "Jonathan!" I shouted, suddenly looking up at him, my eyes wide with fury. But what could I say? My chaotic mind couldn't sort through my thoughts at all. In the end, I just stupidly asked him, "Did you cheat on me?" Jonathan calmly shook his head. "But I have thought about cheating." "Do you really like her that much?" "Not really. I just realized I don't like you that much anymore." The impact of those words surpassed everything. I felt like I could hardly breathe. Jonathan worriedly tried to approach me. "Are you okay?" But I backed away as if startled. "Don't touch me. Diana. Don't touch me." Jonathan froze in place, his expression darkening. He pulled a cigarette from his pocket, hesitated to light it. This made him incredibly restless. He crushed the cigarette and threw it into the trash can. He said, "Diana, don't be like this. I don't want to hurt you. I originally wanted to find a chance to talk to you properly. This child comes at the wrong time. We're not even 30 yet, we still have half our lives ahead of us. Living like this for a lifetime is pretty meaningless." I turned around numbly. Jonathan grabbed my hand. "Where are you going?" My body trembled uncontrollably. "I need to think." "Jonathan, let me think." In the bedroom, I wrapped myself tightly in the blanket. It was cold, really cold. I was pregnant, and we finally had our own child. At that moment, I was so happy that I cried. A year ago, Jonathan had held me and said he wanted a daughter, one who looked like me and had a personality like his. "Of course, it's fine if she's as non-confrontational as you. I would never let you two be bullied." But now he said the child had come at the wrong time, that I should abort the baby. Just thinking about this made my teeth chatter from the chill. Jonathan said he didn't love me that much anymore. I could actually feel it. I had seen how much he loved me. So when he didn't love me, I noticed it right away. He became busier, and the opportunities to talk to me became fewer and fewer. Sometimes when I share funny stories about work and life with him, he only responds with a casual lacking the enthusiastic reactions he used to have. Sometimes we don't even speak a word to each other in a day. I felt disappointed. But when he occasionally jokes and hugs me, asking for a kiss, I think maybe I'm overthinking it. Perhaps love is like that. When it reaches a peak, it slowly declines. Whose marriage doesn't go from passionate to mundane? But at least we would still be together. That was enough for me. But it turned out that Jonathan didn't think so. He felt that living like this for a lifetime was quite boring. In a daze, I suddenly heard a knock on the door outside, along with a girl's soft voice. I couldn't hear clearly what they were saying. Suddenly remembering Jonathan's earlier words, I jumped up and rushed out. The bedroom door slammed against the wall with a loud bang. The two people at the doorway turned to look at me simultaneously. The unfamiliar girl was wearing a fitted t-shirt and tight jeans, her hair in a simple bun, and she was indeed pretty. "Is this your wife?" "Shut up." "Hee hee, I knew I'm prettier." I said, "Shut up." The girl stuck out her tongue. Okay, don't be mad at me." Jonathan looked at me with a serious expression, but his words were directed at the girl. "You go back first, I'll send someone to pick you up." The girl looked unhappy. "Huh? Didn't you say you'd accompany me tonight?" Jonathan pressed his lips into a straight line, clearly annoyed. He said, "Be obedient." The girl seemed to sense his mood. She looked at me, clearly defiant. Suddenly, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him on the cheek. "Haha, I'm leaving, love you." The girl came and went like a gust of wind, and Jonathan and I stood there silently confronting each other. I felt a bit dazed. I thought, so this is what Jonathan likes now, youthful, lively, interesting, and bold. Or has he always liked girls like this? In the past, when his friends asked him, "Diana is so boring, quiet, dull, and uninteresting. What do you even like about her?" Back then, Jonathan said, "I like someone who clearly isn't my type." Isn't that true love? I only heard the second half of his words back then. Now, the first half suddenly came to mind. Does this mean I've never been his type? Jonathan didn't know when he walked up to me. "Why aren't you wearing shoes? What if you catch a cold?" "You." "Jonathan." I interrupted him. I agree." "What?" "Divorce." "I agree." "Divorce. What do you need to do for a divorce?" "Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau." "It's too late today, I can't go." "I can go early tomorrow, work starts at 8, leave at 7. "And then? What else do I need to do?" "Right, this house was bought by Jonathan, I need to move out. The house is in my name, and I need to transfer ownership. But I can pack my things first. The small house for which I paid the down payment might be dusty, I can find someone to clean it. I wonder if they work at night. I should make a phone call to ask. And I also need to find a moving company. Where's my phone?" I walked from the living room into the bedroom and then back to the dining room. Jonathan furrowed his brows and grabbed me. "What are you looking for?" I pulled away from him. "Where's my phone?" "Where did my phone go?" "Did you see my phone?" Jonathan picked up my phone from the corner of the sofa and handed it to me. I tapped into the dialer. But I didn't know the number. "Right, I'll find it online." "Find? What was I looking for again?" "Diana, what are you going to do?" I turned back to look at Jonathan, dazed. His eyes were complicated, filled with mixed emotions, looking both sad and pained. But maybe I was overthinking it. He might just be simply impatient. In that instant, I felt weakened. "It's late today, I'll come back tomorrow to move my things." "Where are you going?" "To a hotel, I guess." I went back to my room to pack a few things, some clothes and toiletries. When I came out, Jonathan was still standing there. He stared intently at what I was holding. "You don't need to do this." I didn't say anything and walked outside. Jonathan clenched his fists. "You stay here, I'll go." Jonathan left. Where he went, I didn't know. Since we got married, other than on business trips, Jonathan wouldn't stay out all night. He said he wasn't used to it. Even when our feelings had faded, he was still the same. He would come home late but never not come home. No matter how fierce our arguments got, we never slept in separate rooms. Once, I was so angry that I went to the guest room. Jonathan didn't say a word. But when I came back the next day after work, I found the guest room door locked, and both the key and the spare key were missing. Men are rational. Women are emotional. Women rely on these tiny details. I always feel that love is hidden within them, quietly nurturing. But it seems that I'm the only one who remembers. That night, I tossed and turned, eyes wide open until dawn. I thought a lot. I went through the 10 years from when I met Jonathan until now, and it felt like I had died once. At 6:30, I got up on time. Just as I finished getting dressed, I heard the sound of the door opening, followed by a few soft noises. Knock, knock, knock. Are you up? I bought breakfast. It was Jonathan. His voice was somewhat hoarse and deep. He would sound like that when he stayed up all night. When I came out of the bedroom, he was staring at the coffee machine. Hearing the noise, he turned around. Do you want coffee or, forget it, I'll get you a cup of warm water? He pressed his forehead in annoyance. When I came out of the bedroom, he was staring at the coffee machine. Hearing the noise, he turned around. Do you want coffee or, forget it, I'll get you a cup of warm water? He pressed his forehead in annoyance. Not urgent, the divorce agreement hasn't been prepared yet. Divorce agreement. Isn't it unnecessary? I will transfer the house and car to you, besides, we don't have much financial entanglement. But Jonathan suddenly let out a cold laugh. Net out? Do you want to net out? There's no need to rush. Since I proposed the divorce, I won't let you suffer financially. And there's also the child. These 2 words felt like a taboo. The moment he said them, I flung a bowl of porridge across the room. Don't worry, I'll get rid of it. Right. That's the primary issue to resolve in a divorce, a fertilized egg. Jonathan and I started to look forward to having a child around the 3rd year of our marriage. That day was the spring festival, and we went back to his parents' house, along with many relatives. Everyone gathered together, some were playing cards, others were chatting. I didn't quite fit in, so I joined a group of children to play with them. One little girl, not even 2 years old, was in her language explosion phase. I held her for a while, and suddenly she called me Mama, refusing to change it no matter what. Jonathan was delighted. Wow, on New Year's, I picked up a daughter for free, that feels a bit embarrassing. That night when we got home, he suddenly said to me, let's have a baby. Then we started trying to conceive. In the beginning, we looked forward to it every month. But every time, it was a disappointment. We even went to the hospital for tests. The doctor said there was no problem and advised us not to be too anxious, just to let things happen naturally. I was quite anxious for a period. Jonathan comforted me, it's okay, I haven't enjoyed our life as a couple long enough anyway. This child was an unexpected arrival after repeated anticipation and disappointment. I hadn't even prepared myself yet. Fortunately, I hadn't prepared myself. Jonathan accompanied me to the hospital. He was quite insistent, and I didn't have the energy to resist, so I went along with him. After the various examinations, the doctor asked if we were sure we didn't want it. The word sure got stuck in my throat, unable to come out. In the end, it was Jonathan who spoke up. He said, yes. Then I'll help you schedule the surgery for 3 days later. I clenched my fists. Can't it be done today? The doctor's and Jonathan's gazes fell on me simultaneously. The doctor said, there are pre-surgery preparations. You can't eat at least 6 hours before. And since it's a surgery, you need to rest well beforehand. Then tomorrow, I have time in the afternoon. Are you sure? Absolutely. As the doctor went over the precautions with me, Jonathan hurriedly stood up and walked outside. I'm going to smoke. When I exited the outpatient department, he was sitting on a bench outside, leaning forward with his arms on his knees, looking somewhat dejected. Upon seeing me, he wiped his face. Sit for a while, I'll ask the doctor a few questions. I stood outside the outpatient department. The thin door didn't block out sound. I could clearly hear Jonathan's voice asking questions. Will it affect her health? Does it hurt? I've never been afraid of pain. On the contrary, I have a high tolerance for it. Once, when I was still in college and not yet with Jonathan, I fell down the stairs, and the ground was covered in gravel. My arms and legs were all bruised, with large patches of blood. It looked horrible. I bought iodine to disinfect myself. Then I continued to move the things I needed. But when Jonathan found out, he was very unhappy. "You're just a girl. If it hurts, just scream. If you're uncomfortable, cry." He told me, "You can show weakness, at least with me, you can." Eventually, I slowly changed. If I break a soy sauce bottle, I would tell Jonathan that I made a mistake. If I bump my knee, I would tell Jonathan that it hurts. If I lose my way, I would first ask Jonathan how to get there. I used to be fearless and invincible. It was he who confused me and then broke me down. After returning to the company, I took a half-month leave. My boss hesitated. "Half a month is too long. Is something wrong?" I didn't know how to respond. Later, I thought, then just resign. I quit my job of 7 years at the age of 28. I didn't like this job, but it paid well. I had never had the courage to leave. But when a bottle has a crack, I want to shatter it completely. I didn't move out of that house. Jonathan moved out. He didn't show up, his secretary handled everything. Julia, his secretary, and I were somewhat familiar. She chattered. "Actually, that little star just got overly sentimental. President Jonathan only went to a movie and had a meal with her." I shook my head. "It's not because of this. It wasn't because of anything Jonathan did. But because there were some things Jonathan no longer wanted to do. Jonathan was handsome, came from a good family, and had capabilities. Such a person can always attract the opposite sex. It had been like this since university. There were always people pursuing him, always trying to get close to him. But Jonathan rejected them thoroughly. He never gave anyone the chance to get close to him. That was my sense of security. But now, he withdrew his defenses. So, no one's infidelity is one-sided. One party can get close to the other because the other party emits signals of "I can be approached." Jonathan didn't have many belongings. But he had enough. When all those things were cleared out, the whole house felt emptier, making me uneasy. I forced myself to sleep, but that night was a mix of dreams and waking. The next day, I left at the agreed time. Jonathan was standing at the door, not knowing how long he had been there. He said, "I'll go with you." Jonathan's mother rushed over just as I entered the operating room. She was an elegant, composed, and meticulous lady from a wealthy family. But at this moment, her hair was disheveled, and her emotions were agitated. She sternly questioned us, "What on earth are you doing?" Jonathan's mother was not pleased with me, but she wouldn't scold me, wouldn't chase me away, and wouldn't glare at me. On the contrary, she always spoke to me with a smile on her face. With her polite words and unhurried demeanor, she expressed her disapproval and rejection of me. This was condescension. It was the first time I saw her react so intensely. Jonathan clearly was not happy. "What are you doing here?" Jonathan's mother gritted her teeth. "If I don't come, you'll just act recklessly. I know what I'm doing, you don't need to interfere." "I don't want to interfere, but look at what you're doing. If I hadn't accidentally found out, you were planning to hide from me that you wanted to terminate the pregnancy? Why would you want to get rid of a child you struggled to conceive?" Jonathan said, "Because we're getting a divorce." Jonathan's mother suddenly looked at me and then turned to Jonathan. "You proposed this?" "Yes." After a long silence, she exploded, "This marriage was something you insisted on, no one could stop it. Now you're married, and there's a child, and you want a divorce. Where's your love? Where's the love you keep talking about?" What a heart-wrenching question. What we once held on to, others scoffed at. Love? What's it worth? By now, it seems that it really wasn't worth much. Jonathan's pent-up anger finally burst forth. "How ridiculous. When I wanted to marry her, you didn't agree. Now that I want to divorce her, you still don't agree. What is it? Only by opposing me can you show your authority as parents?" If this were at any other time, Jonathan's mother would have turned to leave, but today she held her ground. "Jonathan, usually your nonsense can be overlooked, but Diana is pregnant with your child. You're just going to say you don't want it," Jonathan scoffed. "Are we elevating this to a matter of life? It's just an embryo, an undeveloped seed, it's not that serious, Jonathan. Both Jonathan's mother and I spoke simultaneously. She looked at me. I opened my mouth. Enough. The child will be terminated, and the marriage will be ended. You don't need to react like this. Looking into Jonathan's mother's eyes, I continued, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Jonathan's mother took a deep breath and deflated. I can't interfere with your decisions, but as parents, we always hope you won't regret it. If this child is gone, you will really be finished. 10 years. From when Jonathan and I met until now, 10 years. He pursued me with great effort. It took me a long time to mentally prepare to be with him. There was no way. Jonathan and I came from different worlds. There was a chasm between us. Our first connection was because of a game. In this game, Jonathan was the main character, while I was just an NPC who randomly intruded. At first, that's what I thought. It wasn't until much later that Jonathan told me, I didn't plan to get involved, but when I saw the first person to walk in was you. So he came. He walked 100 steps toward me. He said, Diana, you don't need to move, just don't step back. He said something like this when he was pursuing me. The second time he said it was when he was standing up to his family to marry me. Diana, don't step back. As long as you don't retreat, you can stay where you are. As long as you're behind me, I'm afraid if I turn around, there will be nothing there. Actually, he knew all along. In this relationship, I was the one who had always held back. I pretended to be noble and ready to walk away at any moment, but in reality, it was just my cowardice. I didn't believe that Jonathan and I could have a future. I didn't believe Jonathan and I would always be together. To me, it was merely a greedy pursuit of immediate pleasure. Jonathan was pulling me step by step forward, leading me to open my heart and love him without reservation. If before marriage, Jonathan loved me more than I loved him, then after marriage, it was the opposite. I loved him more than he loved me. My love was increasing. But his love was diminishing. After Jonathan's mother said what she needed to, she turned and left without looking back. In the hospital room, I stared outside, watching the sun set and the night fall. Jonathan. Is the divorce agreement ready? Bring it for me to sign. The surgery is tomorrow morning. Okay. The whole surgical process was quick. When I was pushed back to the hospital room, Jonathan asked if I was in pain. I shook my head. It really didn't hurt. But it was very cold. Something was pulled out from my abdomen, leaving me feeling hollow. I felt a sense of desolation. I curled up in the blanket and drifted into a deep sleep. In my dreams, someone held my hand and slipped something into it. When I woke up and looked, it was a hand warmer. You're awake. Are you hungry? It was Jonathan. He was sitting in the chair next to my bed, not knowing how long he had been there. You don't need to stay with me. I'll be able to leave on my own soon. Why are you in such a hurry? You need to be observed for 2 days. No need. You need to be observed for 2 days. I've already. Jonathan. I interrupted him. This is my own business. When we decided to end this relationship, we should have faded from each other's worlds. Of course, we would still have interactions, like when signing the divorce agreement, or when applying for the divorce at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Jonathan offered me a generous settlement. The car and house in my name remained mine, and he also gave me a large sum for alimony. I looked at it for a long time and, without refusing, signed my name. Jonathan smirked. This is the first time you've so readily accepted what I've given you. Because I was an orphan and poor, I was far more sensitive to money than others. I was self-sufficient and frugal and never took anything from Jonathan. If he gave me something, I would always repay him with something of equal value. This had always been a significant conflict between Jonathan and me because he didn't understand. Given our relationship, what's wrong with me spending money on you? Why do you always want to divide things so clearly? Are you afraid of owing me? Or do you not want to owe me? Diana, do you love me or not? I loved him. Of course, I loved him. But when a person's self-esteem reaches its peak in one aspect, it turns into insecurity. I was afraid others would say I was trying to climb the social ladder, and I was afraid Jonathan would think I was only after his money. I awkwardly tried to do things that would make our relationship feel more equal. I could accept what was mine was his. But I couldn't accept what was his was mine. Maybe we've come this far not entirely because of him. The day after we signed the divorce agreement, Jonathan and I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau together. We didn't have much to say to each other. Only when we parted did Jonathan ask me, "Haven't you been eating well? Why have you lost so much weight?" I remained silent. He continued, "Diana, no matter what happens, I hope you'll be okay." I lightly murmured an then flagged a car to leave. I was glad Jonathan didn't ask more questions. Like why I wasn't driving, or why I was wearing glasses. I wasn't well. I had insomnia, couldn't sleep, had no appetite, and couldn't keep anything down. I knew this wasn't right. I forced myself to sleep. Listening to stories, songs, white noise, until I started taking sleeping pills. I forced myself to eat. But I would just throw up after eating a little. I didn't want Jonathan to know. I felt too embarrassed. I didn't expect Jonathan's mother would come to see me. When she brought a thermos, I was dazed, taking a long time to react. Jonathan's mother frowned. "What's going on? Are you sick?" My hand tightened unconsciously on the doorknob. Jonathan's mother had already walked in and raised her hand to touch my forehead. "No fever, what's bothering you?" I shook my head and turned away. "I didn't sleep well." "Why did you come over?" The house was a mess, with takeout boxes still lying on the dining table. Jonathan's mother seemed to pretend she didn't see it. She sat down on the other side with a thermos. "I made some soup, drink a little." I felt a wave of irritation rising inside me. Wasn't this unnecessary? I never enjoyed this kind of treatment when I was with Jonathan. I didn't want to see Jonathan anymore, nor did I want to see anyone related to him. But why did they always have to come to me? My silence made her pause her movements. She asked me, "Do you want to talk to me?" I felt even more irritated. No need. But she started talking anyway. "Life is long, family ties, friendships, love, all of it is just a series of segments. I didn't agree with your relationship at first, but you two got married and seemed to get along well. Some say I misjudged, but even at your most loving times, I still didn't have faith in it. Diana, you might not even realize it, but every time you come to our house, your gaze is always fixed on Jonathan. You don't sit too close to him, but you don't distance yourself either. It's as if there's a thread between you two. Jonathan pulls you along, and you hold on tight, afraid to let go but also afraid to get closer." "Enough, please stop." I interrupted her. I didn't want to hear this. But she shook her head. "I didn't mean to say anything bad about you. I was just thinking that everyone knows you love Jonathan, he knows, and you know too. Yet, even in that situation, you still suppress yourself." When Jonathan brought up the divorce, I suddenly thought, now that Jonathan has loosened that thread, what will you do? I clenched my fists, my fingertips digging into my palms, my arms trembling from the effort. "I need to rest, you should go home." Jonathan's mother stood up. "Diana, your marriage to Jonathan is just a small part of your life. If it's gone, it's gone. You have to move forward. You're a good girl, I always hope you'll be okay." "That's not true. Jonathan and I met when we were 18, and now at 28, it's been 10 years, exactly 10 years. This is almost half my life. I have no family, no friends. My life is so thin that after removing Jonathan, there's almost nothing left. I relied on Jonathan. I knew at the moment I realized I loved him. I wanted to see him anywhere, anytime. I wanted to be in contact with him every moment. I wanted to know everything about him. I wished I could be with him wherever I went. I knew this was wrong, so I desperately suppressed myself. I couldn't be jealous or suspicious. A good relationship needed to maintain distance and give each other enough space. I wanted to be a perfect girlfriend, a perfect wife. I wanted to be economically and mentally independent. I wanted to be able to hold on but also let go. So if Jonathan wanted a divorce, I would agree. I couldn't cling to him or try to hold on. That would be wrong. After the divorce, there should be distance. We couldn't contact or meet. That wouldn't be good. I suppressed my instincts with reason. I was doing well. But I felt so cold. This empty house, this dense, dark night, I was about to suffocate. Before I met Jonathan, I had always walked alone. But only I knew how scared I was of being alone. Once again, I couldn't sleep. I ran out of sleeping pills. I took a bottle of white liquor from the cabinet. I just wanted to have a good sleep, but when I opened my eyes again, I was in the hospital. After a few seconds of confusion, I realized I might have messed up. You're awake? I'll go call the doctor. Jonathan stood up to leave, and I grabbed his hand. What's wrong? I said, I'm sorry. Jonathan's muscles tensed. In the moment I released his hand, he suddenly tightened his grip on mine. His eyes were slightly red, and his face looked haggard. Diana, what were you doing? If I hadn't been unable to contact you and rushed over, if I hadn't discovered it in time, you could have died, you know? How embarrassing. The dignity I had maintained for so long crumbled at that moment. I could only repeat over and over, no, I couldn't sleep, I just wanted to have a good sleep. The after effects of alcohol poisoning are terrible dizziness and vomiting. I couldn't even sit up. I could only sleep in a daze. I seemed to keep saying sorry to Jonathan over and over again. It was as if I were repeatedly explaining to him that I hadn't attempted suicide and didn't want to, I just couldn't sleep. Jonathan remained silent. Then it seemed like someone lay beside me and held me. It felt like someone was telling me that I couldn't go back. After this incident, Jonathan and I didn't contact each other again. I didn't ask him why he called me, as if it had never happened. When I got home, I threw away all the alcohol and didn't buy any more sleeping pills. I couldn't continue like this. I couldn't do this anymore. On the first night, I stayed awake until dawn, then endured another day. By the time night fell again, I couldn't hold on anymore and fell asleep. I slept until 5 in the morning. I got up to buy breakfast but saw Jonathan's car downstairs. The feeling was quite complicated. I paused for a few seconds, then turned around and went back upstairs. I still had instant noodles at home, I'd just eat those. In the afternoon, Jonathan was still there. I called him. Can you leave? He was silent for 2 seconds. I'm leaving. I tried to adjust my state of mind, and in the end, I found that the best way to make myself sleep was to tire myself out. During this time, Jonathan didn't show up again, nor did his mother. But I still felt a heaviness in my heart. I knew I wouldn't find peace until everything was completely settled. Finally, after a month, it was time for us to get the divorce certificate. We entered the Civil Affairs Bureau together and came out together. Looking at the divorce certificate in my hand, I finally sighed in relief. Just as I turned to leave, Jonathan called out to me. Diana. Take care. Those were the last 2 words Jonathan said to me. After getting the divorce certificate, I sold the house and the car and left the city. I came from a small place and was preparing to return to that small place. From now on, those people and those matters would have nothing to do with me. Epilogue, Jonathan. Jonathan's mother had asked him, "Are you crazy to get divorced over such a small celebrity? Don't you know she's after your money?" Jonathan knew. Of course, he knew. So he smiled indifferently. If she's after my money and I'm after her looks, isn't that fair? Getting things done with money is so simple. It's exhausting to let feelings get involved. This undoubtedly struck a nerve with Jonathan's mother, and she raised her hand to slap him. It was the first time Jonathan's mother had hit him. But Jonathan wanted to say, "Good slap." Jonathan didn't know when he had started to feel tired. Loving Diana was exhausting. Jonathan knew Diana loved him. But Diana was like a rural well, beneath it was an inexhaustible supply of clear, sweet groundwater. But to bring that water up, you first had to pour a bucket of water down to create a channel. Without a catalyst, no matter how much effort you put in, it would only be futile. That's how Diana was. When they were dating, if Jonathan didn't contact her, she could go on without taking the initiative. At first, Jonathan thought Diana didn't like him. Until one time he discovered that Diana's phone screen was stuck on his contact. She had been staring at it without pressing the button. As long as Jonathan was around, Diana's gaze would follow him. When he expressed his love for Diana, her eyes were filled with love and dependence. At first, Jonathan enjoyed it. He dominated, he led the relationship, he stirred Diana's emotions. But Jonathan could also get tired. Occasionally, he wanted Diana to take the initiative. He thought being closer to Diana would help, like becoming a couple. But he was wrong. He could clearly feel that Diana loved him a lot. But Diana would rather wait for him at home until midnight than give him a call. She didn't interfere with his schedule. Even if he forgot their anniversary or missed her birthday, it didn't matter. If Jonathan was slightly cold while talking to her, Diana would immediately retreat into her shell, not wanting to touch him again. At first, Jonathan felt tired. Later, he felt a bit annoyed. He started to dislike this side of Diana and didn't want to deal with it anymore. What had once been spontaneous actions were now reduced to mere obligation. Until that little celebrity started to flirt with him. A clumsy trick, and surprisingly, Jonathan smiled and accepted it. Later, he thought about it for a long time. He suddenly realized he didn't like Diana that much anymore. He wanted to try and see if he really didn't like Diana. If that was true, should he get a divorce, or just make do and continue? In fact, Jonathan hadn't thought many things through. That day, he went on a date with the little celebrity, having dinner and watching a movie. It was quite enjoyable. But that kind of enjoyment felt superficial, like not hitting traffic on the way out, not encountering any idiots at work, and making coffee just right. Yet superficial happiness is still happiness. Isn't happiness the most important thing in life? So Jonathan agreed to the little celebrity's second invitation. But surprises always come so unexpectedly. Diana was pregnant. At that moment, Jonathan felt irritated. The events of the past few days were a mess, and he hadn't yet figured things out. Everything felt tangled. The only thought he could process was, if they had a child, the divorce would be very complicated. Was he really prepared to live like this for the rest of his life? No. So this child couldn't stay. But if he made Diana terminate the pregnancy, they would definitely get a divorce. Fine, let's divorce. If you were to ask whether Jonathan's decision had an element of giving up, the answer would be yes. Time was tight, and with the knot that couldn't be untangled, cutting it all off seemed like the solution. But later, many times in the middle of the night, Jonathan thought that maybe he regretted saying that. That feeling was very anxious, especially when Diana was going to have the abortion. Countless voices echoed in his mind, urging him to stop her, to save her, to call it off. Just like his mother said, if they lost the child, they would be completely finished. But his body didn't want to do anything. And what if he did stop her? Act as if nothing had happened? He couldn't do it. Diana couldn't either. Diana had bought a box of oranges. Others said they were sweet and juicy. But when she brought them home, they turned out to be very sour. It was okay if they were a little sour, they were still edible. But the frugal Diana threw them all away. Jonathan asked her why. She said, if I don't throw them away, I'll feel uncomfortable. Can you understand that feeling? I expected them to be like this, but they didn't meet my expectations. If I don't throw them away, I'll keep feeling uneasy. At first, Jonathan didn't understand until later, when Diana stopped contacting her only friend. The reason was that Diana's friend lashed out at her due to a breakup and said some unpleasant things. The next day, she apologized to Diana and kept pestering her, saying, let's just laugh it off, okay? Diana awkwardly smiled and seemed to nod, but her friend could no longer reach her, and she didn't take the initiative to contact her anymore. Jonathan thought maintaining a facade of peace should be possible. But Diana shook her head. Some words, once spoken, can't be taken back. Anyway, I can't go back to the way things were, where it was awkward but manageable. It's better to cut off contact completely. Just consider me petty. Jonathan knew that for Diana, there was no turning back once she'd drawn the line. When he said those things to Diana, she wouldn't even want to see him anymore. Sure enough, from that day on, Diana's gaze no longer fell on him, and she avoided talking to him as much as possible. Let alone trying to salvage or entangle things. Diana couldn't do it. But his mother told him, you should pay attention to Diana, I can see she's not doing well. Don't harm her because of your foolishness. Jonathan thought his mother was overthinking it, but he couldn't help but call Diana. One call didn't go through, and another was unanswered. Jonathan panicked. He rushed back home, trembling as he entered the password. When he saw Diana unconscious in the living room, his regret peaked. So what if he didn't love her as much anymore? Wasn't that a reason to not stay together? Diana woke up in the early morning. She only said 2 sentences to Jonathan. I'm sorry. It's not that, I can't sleep. I just wanted to get a good night's sleep. she kept repeating. Her apologies didn't come from feeling like she had done something wrong to Jonathan, but simply felt like she was bothering him. As for the latter sentence, she seemed afraid Jonathan would misunderstand. At that moment, Jonathan felt particularly sad. How did they end up like this? But his mother said to him, divorcing now might not be a bad thing. Jonathan didn't understand. His mother said, today you can date someone else and tomorrow you can sleep with someone else. That's the bottom line. If you lower it once, you can lower it a second time. People, if they can part amicably, shouldn't wait until they tear each other apart. Those words made Jonathan feel quite uncomfortable, but at the same time he felt unconvinced. He thought he was just trying things out. He had control and wouldn't go all the way. He just hadn't figured a few things out. It was that child that came at the wrong time. Once he thought it through, Jonathan suddenly couldn't voice it. How could he think it through? By seeking novelty in someone else? Jonathan kept replaying it in his mind. It seemed that the hardest moment for Diana wasn't the abortion but when she saw that girl flirting with him. At that moment, he had become like that orange that looked sweet but was actually sour. So Diana had to throw him away, otherwise, she would suffer day after day, tormented night after night. After Diana left the city, Jonathan went through a period of indulgence and revelry, but soon he lost interest. Nevertheless, it felt particularly empty. He went to Diana's city and took a quick look at her. She had opened a 24-hour cafe bookstore. She hired an employee and lived there herself. A quick glance, he didn't dare to go in. Once he heard an employee ask her, "Boss, don't you feel uncomfortable living in this little attic?" Diana smiled and said, "I like it when there are many people." Jonathan's heart felt like it was pricked by a needle. It wasn't particularly painful, but it was hard to bear. He took a few deep breaths to suppress it. He knew that Diana didn't really like crowds, she was just afraid of being alone.